I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the drought is prompting California farmers to re-examine how they water their crops. The water-thirsty crop feeling the heat from the drought debate, plus how an Imperial Valley farmer cut his water use in half.
And Summer Slide is not a toy, it's not a dance, but it happens to lots of kids who forget their school lessons during summer break. I'm Peggy Pico with tips on how to avoid education backsliding. But first, California Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, a former Stanford cheerleader, talks with us about two bills to protect high school and professional cheerleaders.
Counting down to the Big Bay Boom, the epic fireworks show attracting hundreds of thousands of people to San Diego. The advice for anyone dealing with the holiday crowds: pack some patience. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off. California's Public Utilities Commission has voted unanimously today on a major overhaul of electricity rates. Under the revised rate structure, big energy users are set to get a break on electricity, while more efficient customers will see their bills go up. The rate structure would affect more than 10 million electricity accounts covered by San Diego Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, and Pacific Gas and Electric. This is the first major overhaul of the rate system in 15 years. The Independence Day weekend kicked off today with crowded beaches and crowded highways. The San Diego Tourism Authority is expecting big numbers over the holiday weekend. Tourism Chief Joe Terzi says hotel occupancy is expected to be at nearly 100% for the holiday weekend.
Occupancy is up, the rates are up, the spend is up, which is more important. You know, our overall objective is to make sure that when people come here, they spend money in the community. And just in these 3 days alone, they will spend, visitors to San Diego just for this weekend will spend $70 million.
The occupancy rate for hotels is on pace to top 78% for the year, finishing above the record of 75.5%. More than 33 million people visited San Diego last year, pumping an estimated $9.2 billion into the local economy. Fireworks will light up the sky over San Diego Bay come 9 o'clock tomorrow night. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler says more than 500,000 people will descend on the coast to watch the celebration of independence.
Just next to the Midway Museum is Tuna Harbor Park. It gets its fair share of tourist crowds, but nothing compared to the masses that'll pack in to watch the Big Bay Boom. The Port of San Diego's Tanya Castaneda says the 4th of July fireworks are very special.
The Big Bay Boom is one of the most iconic, wonderful 4th of July events anywhere in Southern California.
If you want to watch the spectacle from a vantage point like Tuna Harbor Park, Castaneda says take public transit.
MTS has really stepped up in recent years and offered expanded bus and trolley service. There's free parking available at Qualcomm Stadium with the purchase of an MTS trolley ticket, so that's another option.
For 15 years, the Port of San Diego has sponsored the Independence Day extravaganza. Starting promptly at 9 p.m. the night of the 4th, the sky over San Diego Bay will light up with booming, colorful explosions.
You can watch it from anywhere around the bay and have an amazing experience seeing these fireworks reflecting off our beautiful water.
The crowds oohing and awing are so massive, roads are closed.
So we know that traffic and parking is always going to be tight. Each year, Harbor Island and Shelter Island, at some point during the evening, have enough parking filled up that we have to have our harbor police shut down vehicle access.
Castaneda has some advice for those wanting premium spots.
Make sure you plan ahead and get there early so that you can enjoy the whole show.
As a matter of fact, I have my eye on a spot right over there. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
And we'll be looking for you there, Matt. City of San Diego Police, meanwhile, expect to see nearly 1 million people at the beaches over the holiday weekend. Police Captain Mark Hanton recommends beach fans pack their patience. He says people can be waiting up to 3 hours in traffic after last year's fireworks show. The alcohol ban has helped curb some of the bad behavior near the water, but officers say they're ready for pretty much anything.
We haven't seen the types of giant brawls that we have in the past, but we still need to be there in close proximity with a good presence to show people that we are going to take care of those issues. And we will arrest people who are displaying the behavior, being drunk in public, being antagonistic when they're drunk and can't take care of themselves.
There will be at least 80 more officers on patrol by city beaches, and there will also be extra squads of traffic officers on parole. From pie eating contests to patriotic parades, KPBS.org has a list of Independence Day events. Just go to the events section and check it out on our webpage. Environmentalists hope the newly signed California budget helps them get some trash out of the Tijuana River Valley. Rainfall over the years has pushed tons of garbage into the sensitive habitat. Wild Coast's Paloma Aguirre stands in the sandy channel that can become a raging torrent when it rains.
Right now, we're in the middle of summer. We have huge overgrowth of both native plants and invasive plants, and it's very hard to see everything that's stuck underneath us and those plants. During the wet weather season is when you would see all of the hundreds of tons of trash and tires that are washed across every year. Getting that trash out of the valley is tough. Large earth-moving equipment won't work because it's sensitive habitat. Tijuana sits above the valley, and a lot of waste washes down gullies like this one in Goat Canyon. Here, refuge manager Chris Peregrine says the state spent millions on special basins that capture the debris.
As that water flows into the United States, it comes with excess sediment and all sorts of trash, and the facility captures it before it enters the sensitive habitat. Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina says a successful cleanup attacks the problem a number of different ways. A new state budget includes language that allows California to spend money on prevention efforts in Mexico. He says if tire waste can be contained there, the old tires can't wash across the border and into the valley.
The first thing, obviously, is to clean up and help restore the Tijuana River Valley. The second thing is to really make sure we clean up all the existing tires in the watershed and sort of culverts in Tijuana so they don't wash across the border.
Dedina also wants to see better tire recycling. In addition to the cleanup efforts, there is also money set aside to make Borderfield State Park more accessible. Right now, the area is difficult to find, and weather forces frequent closures. As of this month, Mexicans must pay a 16% sales tax on certain types of fast food. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero says some Tijuana residents aren't happy about it.
The sales tax is Mexico's latest move to rein in high obesity rates. It applies to prepackaged or ready-made foods sold at convenience stores like OXXO, the Mexican equivalent of 7-Eleven. That includes foods like pizza, hot dogs, sandwiches, and burritos. Tijuana residents say they often buy their meals at convenience stores to save time. Ramon Diaz is one of them. He says the tax is going to make things difficult for him.
It affects me a lot because I don't have anyone to make me food. So I have to buy burritos, hamburgers, and sandwiches in convenience stores.
The president of the Tijuana Chamber of Commerce told me the tax is expected to increase border crossings to San Diego, as Tijuana residents will want to buy this food where it's cheaper. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Some lawmakers want to allow voters to hit the brakes on California's controversial high-speed rail project. The rising price tag prompted a new bill in Sacramento. Costs have climbed to a projected $68 billion, and bill supporters say that voters should have a chance to kill the project because they'll be stuck with the bill. Tax experts say the proposed bill will likely not pass.
One of the reasons that this legislation probably will not move, unfortunately, is because they know, the proponents of the high-speed rail project know that the voters would reject it because everything that we've now learned about this project is really bad news.
The bill is being reviewed in committee. A San Diego lawmaker is rallying for athletes in cheerleading. Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez wants the high school activity to be classified as a sport. She joins Peggy Pico to explain a pair of bills calling for cheerleader rights.
AB 949, known as the CHEERS Act, or the California High Schools Expanding Equality, Respect, Safety Standards, passed a Senate Education Committee this week. Meanwhile, another state bill, which requires professional sport team cheerleaders to be paid minimum wage, overtime, and sick leave, awaits Governor Brown's signature. Joining me is the author of both bills, San Diego's State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez. And welcome back, Lorena.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start with this CHEERS Act. How would this bill change things for high school cheerleaders?
It simply would force the CIF to develop competitive cheerleading as a sport in California. So right now it's simply an activity, it's unregulated, largely uncompensated as far as having any kind of mats or coaching standards, and so this would change all that.
And there's also, they would get safety standards and earn PE credit.
Absolutely, like any other sport. So it's I think an idea that is long in coming. A number of other states do it, and it really is about ensuring that cheerleaders are safe. 60% of all catastrophic injuries in high school athletics for women are cheerleading injuries. And so this is something that we really need to focus on.
As you mentioned, 10 other states recognize high school cheerleaders as a sport. Who would this bill apply to in California specifically?
Well, it would be all of the high schools. So basically, CIF would have the same types of competition for cheerleading that they do now for track or football, lacrosse, and they would have to develop also the standards by which these young women and men participate.
So it wouldn't matter if it was a JV or a senior or anything like that if you're a cheerleader in high school, competitive cheerleader. No, your daughter was a cheerleader in high school. You were a cheerleader at Vista High in San Diego and also at Stanford University. What are some of the health and safety concerns you were touching on that are addressed in this CHEERS Act?
Well, in particular, I actually coached, while I was at Stanford, I coached high school cheerleading here in California. And then in Virginia, I coached high school cheerleading. Virginia recognizes it as a sport. They require coaches to go through basic safety training, CPR, ensuring that there are certain rules, how high you can go up, if you have to have spotters, where you can practice. And these are the kinds of things that ensure that these young women and men are safe. They're obviously, every year that goes by, they're doing more and more difficult stunts. They're showing their athleticism more and more, but it can be very, very unsafe. And so we want to change that.
Right, 65%, I think 37,000 injuries in the ER were due to cheerleading in the last few years. Now, let's move on to this professional cheerleaders bill covered under AB 202 that passed the state Senate on Monday, I understand, and it's waiting for the governor to sign it. Give us an example of an NFL cheerleader, let's say, their employment status and their pay.
Well, it's interesting because each team treats them differently, but largely they treat them as independent contractors or they contract with a third party. The Chargers, for example, had on their website that the cheerleaders would be compensated $75 a game. That doesn't include anything for practice time, for other appearances, for modeling, for waiting. $75 does not even come close to the minimum wage when you really look at everything that they're asked to do, forced to do, quite frankly.
And the hours. Then they'll be fired if they don't do it, I understand, a lot of times.
They'll be fired. Oh, absolutely. They have one of the most extensive employment contracts that you can imagine. They're told who they can date, how they can wear their hair, whether or not that they can post pictures up on their Facebook. And so they have all of these rules. Obviously, a lot of money comes out of their own pocket to ensure that they look the way they're supposed to, that they're dressed the way they're supposed to. At the very end, they're not being compensated the same as the guy who's selling a spear.
So I understand that the Raiderettes won $1 million loss settlement, I should say, supporting their status as a team employee. So one of the arguments, though, in that suit was that the women get exposure that could open them up to other opportunities, let's say in other careers. And so that's what they're benefiting from. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, there are a number of fields that you could make that same argument for. That could be the argument in actors and actresses, people in journalism, you know, obviously people in sports. They get the opportunity to do something that they love, to do something great, to put themselves out in front of people. But we still have employment laws in California, and we still require that if you're going to be treated as an employee, that you are compensated as an employee.
Right. The quarterback still gets paid, even if he's on a Wheaties box. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you expect Governor Brown to sign both of these bills?
I'm hopeful. You know, we've had a number of discussions, and interestingly, Governor Brown was apparently a high school cheerleader. And he did say to me, don't worry, I understand it's changed a lot. So that was good news, because I don't think we had the same thing in mind. But I'm hopeful. You know, it's about equity, really. It's about treating women the same way that we've for so long treated men. And I think that it's just a small piece.
All right. California Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The crop that uses the most water in California is one that humans don't even eat, alfalfa, also the top crop in the Imperial Valley, where drought has been shining a light on just how thirsty that crop can be. KPBS science reporter David Wagner explains how one alfalfa farmer cut his water use in half.
Jack Cato manages a 660-acre farm here in the Imperial Valley. Passing through the rows of alfalfa one morning, he spots water pooling at the edge of a field. An underground hose has sprung a leak.
Sometimes the trucks will run over the tapes and damage them. Let's see, there it is.
Believe it or not, this leak is actually a sign of water efficiency. That's because it's a leak in a water-saving drip irrigation system. Subterranean hoses deliver water right to the roots of Cato's alfalfa. He says switching to drip brought his water use down, way down.
Almost half the water usage. Not quite, but almost.
Even when it leaks, this drip system still conserves much more water than the alternative, flood irrigation, which basically drenches the farm.
That big canal you saw over here, it's got gates. You open the gate up and it goes into another smaller ditch.
Open the floodgates bordering each field and water gushes out to saturate the soil. A lot of water can get lost below the roots and through runoff, but most alfalfa farmers out here still rely on flood irrigation, and Cato understands why.
When you've had a successful method of farming and then you come along and you got another method and it's not 100% proven, then why take the gamble?
Alfalfa is grown as feed for animals, mainly dairy cows. When you eat a scoop of ice cream, in a way, you're also eating the alfalfa a cow used to produce milk for that ice cream. No crop in the state uses more water than alfalfa, making it a regular target of criticism in drought-stricken California. Khalid Bali is an irrigation advisor who helps farmers in the Imperial Valley become more water-wise. He says the drought has been making farmers re-examine how they water their crops.
So I don't think that we have the luxury of before that we have unlimited amount of water that can be used for agriculture.
Bali is seeing a lot of new interest in drip because it can cut down on water use and boost crop growth. He says drip irrigation systems have the same kind of appeal as hybrid cars.
Like with hybrid cars, you get more mileage from a gallon, from a gallon of fuel. With the drip irrigation system, it's the same thing. You're going to get more tonnage per unit of applied water.
Put simply, more crop per drop. But Bali says drip won't work for every alfalfa farmer. A lot depends on the type of soil they're farming. Jack Cato farms sandy soil ideal for drip, but farmers working with heavier soils might not stand to save that much water.
Drip irrigation is not the answer for everything, and I would not recommend, switching every acre in Imperial Valley to drip irrigation.
Cato says drip has brought him lots of water savings, but it's also brought him new headaches. It was expensive to install. Even after 6 years, Cato says the drip system hasn't yet paid for itself. And he says for him, the learning curve was steep. In early years with the drip system, he started seeing something no farmer wants to see: dead plants.
Up to a year ago, when I saw the die-off in the fields, I didn't think it was something I wanted to continue with.
Another problem: gophers. Flooding a field drowns any critters who might be living underground.
But let's see if we can find a tunnel.
But with drip irrigation, gophers have plenty of room to dig tunnels and chew up expensive pipes.
But that's a gopher hole. Yeah. And there's probably a gopher in there taking a nap.
Cato says he's been able to keep gophers from doing too much damage by laying out traps. But gophers present just one of the many reasons why farmers might choose to not bother with drip at all.
Whatever farmer starts doing this, he needs to take baby steps and learn how to take care of this. It's not something you learn overnight or in a book. You have to study your fields daily.
Cato still uses flood irrigation on some parts of his farm. Those fields use a lot more water, but at least with them, he never has to worry about finding a leak. David Wagner, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker also worked on that story. Our coverage on California's drought emergency continues on our website. You can find Running Dry at kpbs.org/drought.
With new electricity rates coming, the solar industry is at a crossroads. A part-time San Diegan and big-time litigant for concealed weapons has his day in court. And a local high school improves English learning by pushing aside ESL classes. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
Sunshine helped make history for a plane on a long flight. The Solar Impulse 2 landing in Hawaii today. It set a new record for the world's longest nonstop solo flight, logging 118 hours. It took 5 days to cross the Pacific from Japan. Now, it flew without any fuel on board. Instead, its wings were equipped with 17,000 solar cells that were charging onboard batteries. The plane ran on stored energy at night. School is out for the summer. Every fall, teachers report seeing the results of the so-called summer slide. Peggy Pico talks with educators about how to help students remember what they learned.
Joining me with tips on how to keep kids' learning skills active throughout the summer break are my guest from San Diego County Office of Education, Jessica Rapp-McCreary with the Learning and Leadership Division, and Alicia Butters, Learning and Research Coordinator with the Integrated Technology Service Division. And Jessica, how much educational loss do you typically see come fall?
Well, typically it's in the calculational skills, it's in the stuff that kids felt like they had to memorize towards the end of the year, or it's the, and oftentimes it is actually not used to being in the swing of things and not actually being ready to sit in the classroom for a full school day. And so there's a lot of various things that teachers will do in the first couple of weeks to review and get kids back in the swing of it and get them working together again in school.
Well, we call this the summer slide, which of course is not a dance and not a toy. It's actually this sort of regression that we're talking about here. But I understand it has sort of a disproportionate effect on kids in poor neighborhoods. Do we know why that is?
Well, typically kids in poor neighborhoods don't have access to all of the opportunities and experiences that other children may have during the summertime. They don't get to go on those big trips around the world or even across the country. They don't get to go to camps that are often very, very expensive. And sometimes they don't have access to things like libraries in their close neighborhoods to be able to stay intellectually stimulated.
Well, Alicia, speaking of which, could you give us some specific examples of how to counteract this summer slide?
There's quite a few examples. There's examples where summer reading programs at libraries that Jessica talked about. There are, if you do go to the library, there's technology at the libraries. One of my favorite things to do is have students visit websites. One of my favorite websites is ixl.com, which is a math website, and they can do math problems there, but they're fun. They're actually grade specific, and there's activities that they can do. Another website that I think is probably one of my favorite is Google Maps. They can map out different adventures on Google Maps by dropping pins and adding videos that they create on their own. Most students have...
So you could have kind of a virtual vacation.
A virtual vacation that they create on their own using their own smartphone or video camera.
And Jessica, there is some criticism, though, that kids are kept too busy today. They have these really strict schedules that are going from one thing to another thing, all these activities. Is there a place for some genuine do-nothing leisure time?
We all need time to relax and kind of kick back and enjoy our families and our friends and not be following a very rigid schedule. But I do want to add that learning can be fun and learning can be relaxing, and it's not about forgetting altogether any kind of learning experience, but it's if at all possible, relax, enjoy your summer, enjoy your family, but at the same time be involved in things that keep kids entertained in an intellectual way and in a relaxing way.
So, and Alicia, you touched on this idea of using the computer and technology to help stimulate kids' learning patterns. Any other ideas on that for parents?
Absolutely. Right now there's a big trend in getting students to code. There's even days of coding that are offered, national days of coding for students. But one of the
coding as in learning to code a computer program.
Yes, learning to code a computer program. And they have apps that start students off at pre-K. One is Scratch Junior, and the audience is pre-K to grade 3. And then regular Scratch, the audience there is from 4 to grade 9. And students can create their own programming. They can create their own video games through that. And it's a really great way to get them interacting with computer technology during the summer in a more relaxed environment where they don't have something due in a week, they can spend some time on it and have some real fun.
And make it fun. And Jessica, if you had to give advice to parents as they're preparing to send their kids back, well, we've got a few months back to school, either in August or September, what would be your #1 advice?
I would say get the kids involved in your daily decision making, you know, in a way where you open up your brain and you say to them, hey, we're going to the grocery store. I have $100 to spend. When you want to help me spend it, this is our budget. We need to make sure that we don't go over that budget because we don't have enough money for that. You know, and then you have them shop with you. You know, have them plan how much gas you need when you go on that trip.
So as you go along. Well, there's a list of educational and entertaining links as well for kids and summer learning at kpbs.org. Alicia Butters and Jessica Rapp-McCreary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is game on for Team USA. The women's team hitting the pitch Sunday for the World Cup Finals. Now, the team is seeking its first World Cup title since 1999. They're facing off against Japan in Vancouver, and they're ready for some payback. They lost to Japan in the last World Cup final. San Diego fans can watch the final match at the Waterfront Park in downtown near the County Administration Building. Petco Park also hosting a watch party. The match starts at 4 p.m. We're hoping for clear skies for all the fireworks shows this weekend, and it looks like things will cooperate for the most part. Cloudy by the beaches, temperatures in the 70s. There will be a mix of sun and clouds inland with temperatures in the 80s. If you're going up into the mountain areas, clearing, temperatures there in the 80s as well, and out in the desert, it's going to be like the desert, feel hot, triple-digit temperatures out there. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back here again Monday. Have a great evening.